But Ross is the worst, so he deserves no like leeway from Joey. Joey should go after
Okay,
Rachel if he wants to, because
Ross is the best thing
holy
about that
shit.
entire show.
Holy
He's the
shit.
only good thing in that show is Ross.
Oh my god. I don't think
His
I've seen
paleontology shit is
no
so funny.
one has been so wrong about a friend's opinion before. No one likes Ross.
What
Ross
are you
is no
talking
one's
about?
favorite.
Oh my
What?
god, Ross is the best.
What? Ross is awful.
He's the only one. He's the only one, to my mind, that held a steady job during the entire time.
Sure. That's not true.
Maintained
Monica
his
was a chef.
integrity.
Chandler, other than Chandler deciding to
Ah,
quit at one point
she was in and out of work.
for like two
And
seasons.
Chandler was the worst dude. Like his Russ was
No,
amazing.
Chandler and Monica are the correct couple. They are the best two characters.
No, no.
Wow. I do
No.
like there's an episode where Phoebe argues with Ross about evolution, and one of her comments is like a throwaway comment about like, and I'm not sold on gravity either. And I was like, okay, maybe Phoebe's making some points because gravity is some bullshit nonsense according to Einstein, and I'm not fully sold on gravity right now either.
She was the worst character in the show.
Phoebe?
Yeah, yeah. It felt lazy. It felt like it was. She was too stupid. They made her too stupid, right?
You are way too generous to too many people. There are a lot of Phoebes out there.
Really? Are there people
Very
like that? I mean,
very street smart, but very much in her little bubble of creator nonsense. Yeah. Welcome to Acceptance Criteria, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how software gets made and how we can all do a better job together. My name is Kevin Thomas Euland, and across the chat from me is Andrew Greener. Say hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hmm.
We're also here to get deeper in the human elements. I could go on for an eternity about people and how they think about the process of building complex systems, and I can't think of two better people to do that than Kevin and I.
I'm sure there's a third person out there somewhere. If you've got a topic you'd like to come discuss or rant about, drop us a note and we'll see if we can get you on a future episode. You can go to acceptancepod.com/guest and submit your ideas. And a quick reminder, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening for a while, we wouldn't say no to your going and dropping 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leaving us a nice review. And if you want to leave us a bad review, remember the name of the podcast is The Adventure Zone. Also tell your friends if you like the show and that they should check it out. Some of the best podcasts out there go by word of mouth, and we'd much appreciate it.
We're also building a community on Reddit at r/acceptance criteria and on Discord. You can find links to both in the show notes and on the blog. And I promise we'll be moderating the crap out of them to keep it a nice little slice of the internet.
On this week's show, we'll be going over some breaking news that we didn't get to cover in the last episode, and this was recorded before the election, so don't worry, there's no discussion about the election in this episode. But before we get to all of that, let's take a short break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is a segment we like to call Market Factors, where we talk about industry news stories and trends we're observing. Mostly it's an excuse to rag on bad decisions and argue with each other whether some new piece of tech is worth it. So the first one isn't really news. I'm just bringing it up because everyone should go read John Mulaney's speech to the tech crowd at Dreamforce, the Salesforce tech conference. John Mulaney, the stand-up comedian, was in San Francisco in front of this audience. He clearly got paid a ton of money to come be a speaker, and yet his comments were absolutely scathing. One of the ones I pulled out here. Mulaney later observed that, quote, some of the vaguest language ever devised has been used here in the last 3 days. The fact that there are 45,000, quote, trailblazers here couldn't devalue the title anymore. It was just a full roast of all of the type of nonsense you tend to hear at these tech conferences, and it's great. Everyone should go read it. I will link the article in the in the actual blog post and put it in the show notes, because just a delightful teardown of all of the stuff, all of the buzzword bingo stuff that anybody who works in the tech industry is sick and tired of. It was fantastic.
You know, it reminds me, a mutual friend of ours played a company's slide deck video for me at one point. It was like a consulting group, right? And he's like, don't say anything, just watch the video and tell me what they do, right? At the end.
Right.
And there's like a jet and it's flying, and then there's like, panoramic sort of earth scenes with like water, and you think, oh, maybe they're like alternative like fuel, and then it's like, I don't know, and you get to the end and you're like, what did they do? What
Right.
is he? And
Right.
yeah, like it's kind of embarrassing. Like the spaces. Yeah, I've seen some funky stuff. The tech community can be still very darky, right?
Yes. Well, and it's not just tech, it's also like the sales side of it, but like
Yeah.
any big company does all of that nonsense. Did you ever watch Better Off Ted? It was a sitcom
No.
with Portia de Rossi and I don't remember the guy's name, but it was skewering exactly that type of corporate culture. Viridian Dynamics was the name of this massive organization, and no one knew what Viridian Dynamics did because it did everything, and it had like the scientists in the basement doing weird experiments that would blow up randomly and stuff like that. It's a delightful sitcom. I only had like 2 seasons, I think. It's probably on Hulu or something out there. Everyone should watch Better Off Ted. It is a perfect sitcom of skewering this type of corporate nonsense and is fantastic from start to finish.
Is Portia de Rossi the girl who was in Blue's Frozen Banana
Yes,
show?
she
She was
was
the
on
sister?
Arrested Development. She was the blonde
Oh
sister
yeah,
whose husband blew himself. Yeah.
oh, his character is amazing. It is
Truly,
great.
Tobias Funke or whatever his last name was is
Yeah.
a fantastic character.
Yeah, the industry is interesting, and actually the conference scene's kind of interesting. I imagine like going to some of those big events like Dreamforce.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's one of those ones where like I've been to the AWS conference in Vegas, and there are at least like legitimately hundreds of sessions constantly going on from Amazon, from vendors trying to tell you a lot of it is marketing fluff and nonsense, but there are some genuinely helpful connections and topics you can go learn about for like 3 days. I mean, it's in Vegas, so there's also a bunch of corporate nonsense, but it at least kind of makes sense. I suppose there's a version of that that's helpful from Salesforce, because Salesforce does have this massive ecosystem, but it constantly gets wrapped up in this like weird thing that they have to do to make it justified why you're all there. And it's like, no, the justification is I'm going to go to 8 courses over the course of 2 days and learn a crap ton about how to work with you from experts. Why do you need all of this extra bullshit? Like it's the conference culture is so bizarre. I don't need 40% of what you're doing. Just let me focus on the really helpful 60%. It's weird.
my favorite part of the conferences is just chatting with the engineers who are in the booths, right?
Right.
Because most of them don't understand NDA, so you can normally get some pretty good tips about what they're doing underneath the covers. Be
Right.
careful, people.
Yeah.
Do you
Nice.
actually, nice little anecdote, maybe a good cold opening, but do you remember that time we went to a conference disguised as a completely different company?
When did we do that?
You don't remember
What?
the DMA?
I don't remember this at
You don't
all.
remember the DMA in Boston?
Oh, I do remember the DMA. I had to do a speech at the DMA. I remember our booth. Our booth was really cool.
But you don't remember?
We got all of you guys in as fake company?
We were
I
all
fully
a fake
forgot about that.
company,
I
and
forgot
we were
about
doing
that.
research
That's right.
by
To
interviewing
see what our
other
competitors
companies.
were. Yeah.
And then by like 2 p.m., 3 p.m., the secret was out, and they were like,
Was it really?
We know who you guys are. we found your site. We know who you guys are. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Because they kept asking us like, well, where are you from? And like, oh, can't find you on the internet. None of you
Great.
seem to know anything about what you do. We're like, oh, just a
We
niche.
probably didn't. Yeah, we probably didn't do a great job about that. But
That was great.
that
It was
is
fun. That's
amazing.
startup life, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's great. All right, this next one I bet you're going to be interested in. Meta is teasing Orion, a new brain-powered true augmented reality glasses in a tiny package. And if you take a look at this article, it is pretty interesting. They're still chunky glasses, but you compare them to like Snap, the Snapchat company just announced something called Spectacles 5, and those things are these giant, like it makes 80s nerd movie glasses look ridiculously small. Like it is, the competition here is not that great for augmented reality glasses, so Meta doing Orion is at least interesting tech. I still think it suffers, like basically the article's quote was like, it's utilizing tiny projectors built into the glasses temples to create a heads-up display. Think the 2024 version of Google Glass. And Google Glass died because 1, the technology wasn't quite there, and 2, it was such a violation of people's privacy that we still had enough of a monoculture back in like 2006 or whatever to push back back on the idea that Google Glass didn't have like a little red light lighting up to let you know you were being recorded by somebody's set of glasses. And I don't know that these Meta glasses have that either. There is still a massive privacy concern in this. It's already bad enough that Gen Z will just simply video anybody on the street doing whatever the hell they want to. You have no right to privacy effectively, but this is pretty bad. You at least can notice the TikToker filming a thing in front of the subway. This, you would have no idea. So I think of all of the virtual reality stuff, I'm fully on board with augmented reality. I think that could be really cool if you could get it into glasses as small as I'm used to wearing, and you figure out the privacy concern. And I don't know how you do that yet.
But why are these a privacy concern?
Because you're filming people without their consent.
But you're allowed to film people without their consent.
No, you're not.
What are you talking about? Like, if you're on the street, I can film you.
You absolutely cannot.
Yes, I can. Why can't I
No.
film? Why can't I film you?
Because there's an expectation. So one, if you're an actual company doing it, you have to get people to sign waivers, or you have to like blur their faces or something.
That's different though. Yeah. But that's to use it, right? Like I can videotape you.
Right, but then at least when you're doing a phone, like there's a physical, visible indication that something is occurring. Yes, there is. There absolutely is.
But
you can tell. No. A celebrity can always spot when a person walking by them secretly has the phone held up to video. They saw Taylor Swift in a cafe. Everyone, there's at least some indication. You can be good at it.
But 10 years ago, I could buy a pen that had a camera in it that really gave no indication that it was recording, and I could wear it in my pocket.
And that should have been illegal. That's terrible. Of course you shouldn't be able to do that. You are absolutely violating people's understanding of their ability to exist in public without being filmed.
No.
At minimum, yes.
That has to change.
This is the same. It shouldn't change.
It has to.
London is a nightmare of a city. No, London is a nightmare of a city because of the CCTV cameras that exist everywhere. It's bad enough that the state has the ability to video monitor everyone. Your Republican nonsense.
It's absolutely beautiful.
It's like horrifying.
No smoke, no fire, right? Like if you're behaving, you're nothing to worry about.
That's on the law enforcement side, which is also a violation of constitutional principles, but we'll get back to that. But as a human individual,
the minute you leave your house, you're on camera.
You have a right to know. So men are terrible. Women rightfully don't like a lot of men because they are terrible. The ability for this set of glasses to enable a whole new degree of creepy stalking is legitimately a problem. There is a problem in this country with toxic masculinity and men's reactions to women. You give men the ability to videotape women without their consent, it is going to get worse, not better.
But this is the difference between a liberal and a conservative, right? Like it's the same thing as the gun. The glasses are not dangerous. The human is, right? The gun is not dangerous. The human is, right? Like it's not the problem with the device. It's the fact that we have stalkers.
And just like what we should do is prevent the stalkers from getting a gun if they're on a registry of mental health, past abuses, past crimes, just like guns should have safeties on them, just like people who want to own a gun should be required to go through certification and training, just like people who want to own a gun should have to have a way to lock it up and prevent the kids from getting to it. All of these controls are in place to say, fine, you can have the gun as long as you use it responsibly. All people are saying is put a little red light on the corner of the glasses so people know when you're videoing them.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to put some safety controls in place.
This is going to create opportunity, right? Because in the future, if we all embrace it and we stop worrying about privacy, right? Like I will get alerted on the network when I am being recorded, and I'll be able to say, cool, fuzzy me up. And I'll fuzzy. So they're going to be recording a blob anyway, just like in Black Mirror. So,
but that's all I'm saying is there are no controls in place to do any of that today. So until those controls are in place,
so you're going to be on some videos.
No, so until those controls are in place, you have to provide alternative mechanisms to help people protect their privacy. It is a fundamental human right.
No, it's not a fun. I don't get that. Like, it's like when I leave my house, it's like you guys are one step away from saying I have to close my eyes because I need consent to look at you. You're in public.
No, everything is degrees. There are degrees of murder. We classify murder in different degrees. We can classify things in degrees. No one's telling you have to go close your eyes and walk around with a blind stick all day, but there are degrees of that. You can abuse this, and the problem is in these situations, you sound like a white Midwesterner who's like, I'm not racist, therefore racism racism doesn't exist because I'm white and I'm not racist. And it's like, cool, you're not a creepo dude who's out there using technology to stalk women, but they exist and they cause real harm. And they are going to use technology like this to make their ability to cause harm greater.
Yeah, but then there shouldn't be an internet, right? Like there's bad things on the internet. Even that's not really controlled very well. Like it's not the glass's fault, right? Like I should be able to record whatever I want, unless I'm on private property and then someone comes over and says no cameras, and I'm like, cool, you own the building, I can't record here. But the minute I'm in public, no one can stop me recording. I can record. I could wear a button all day long that's recording everything, and then I go home and I stick it on a big screen and I watch my day. Nobody can stop me from doing that.
They can, though, because public property is a group's private property. It is all of ours to decide what to do with. And if the culture comes together and says public property, you're not allowed to do that, then just like you're willing to respect the private property owner's ability to tell you not to record, when
No.
when the culture tells you you don't get to.
No. The agreement is I won't post it somewhere public. I mean, think about it. Like people are recording at Disney the whole day, right? That videotaping their family's adventure to Disney. There's all these people in the background, right? None of them are like, "Hey, am I in the background of your video?" No, it's
But
fine.
you're glossing over the actual harm caused by people who would take advantage of
I'm
this, and
not.
so it's.
I'm not.
But
I'm not glossing over
You're
it.
saying there's no solution to it, and the solution is controls that get put in place. Put a safety on the gun. Put a breathalyzer on the car. There are things that we can do to mitigate so that we're not telling people no one's allowed to drive because there's drunk drivers. We're saying there are things you could do to mitigate the harm.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that we want the same destination. What I'm saying is that that's not how we evolve. That's not how the industry's evolved, right? Like
And
no
that's
one looked
bad.
at.
We should be upset with that. That's the status quo. The existence of the status quo is not by its nature simply because it exists, good or bad. It is simply the status
You know
quo.
what it's
We
like?
can decide what the status quo needs to change.
It would be like waiting for governance and compliance to sign off on everything before you go live.
Yes. Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course you should. Of
I
course
know
you
you
should.
should, but that's not how we evolve. That's not how business grows.
And you should be fired if you don't do that because it's a risk to the client and to the company and to, of course you should.
Like, we didn't make a nuclear bomb and then procrastinate for 100 years over it, right? We made a nuclear bomb and we used it and we were like, shit, we learned a lot about nuclear bombs from using them.
Did you not understand the moral conclusion of the movie Oppenheimer? You probably skipped 10 through it because it was too long.
Well,
You're willing to watch 3 hours of Tarantino, but when it comes to...
I will say that history has been kind to Oppenheimer in a way because he had some pretty dubious friends, right? And it was always sort of painted that he was unfairly removed from having top secret clearance. And I'm actually like, you hang with some questionable people, you're probably going to lose your clearance, right?
Fine, but
and I get it. I took what you took from the movie, like, oh yeah, but I'm also like, but when has humanity ever not jumped in two-footed and just been like, okay, time to clean up? Like, what did we learn from this?
And the consequence is the lessons we can learn from the past. We're doomed to repeat those mistakes if we don't learn the lessons. So why aren't we learning the lesson that allowing them to go from figuring out how to make the nuclear detonation work on a Tuesday to bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki on a Friday is bad, actually? Why is the conclusion that people draw from that, why is that example good? That example is bad. We should learn that lesson and not jump in 2 feet first on all of these other topics when we can learn how to not do it so poorly.
And that, again, we agree on that, right? I'm just saying, like, it's not going to happen. Genocide, we know genocide is bad. We still do it, right? Like, humans are not going to change. It is the only way we release stuff is two-footed, right? We released the nuclear bomb, two-footed, everything. We're going to have this stuff. Privacy is not going to catch up to where we're at. I guarantee.
And I get to complain about that and tell people that they should be better. And I will sit on my moral high horse when I do so because I'm right.
Yeah, no, you absolutely are right. I don't disagree with you. Like, look, the fact that we have things like Daniel's Law and the number of laws that we have because somebody took advantage of technology to do something, the ultimate bad things to other humans is unforgivable.
And imagine we could have learned these lessons. We knew these lessons beforehand. We didn't need Daniel's Law.
We did not. But
so when are we going to learn that lesson? Why can't we expect better from each other?
We're not. That is my overarching consistent message is it will not. There is no redeeming moment in our evolutionary future where we suddenly conscientiously go, we shouldn't do this for another 50 years.
Right? It
right?
is weird that the liberal, godless crew are the ones hoping for the best out of humanity, and the conservative Christians are like, people are the worst. We should just fucking deal with the shittiness of our situation. Like, it is wild to me that those two things should be. You would think that the godless liberals would be like, people are the worst. We should just deal with the anarchy of it. And the Christians would be like, love your neighbor and expect better from them. But we don't get that in our reality today.
Yeah, but a lot of us on the conservative side that have faith, right? We're still scientists, and for me, there's enough evidence at this point that this is how we evolve, right?
Sure.
Like at this period in time, maybe in 300 years, we're at a post scarcity future, and we're better. Maybe we're better, right? Like I hope to think the future we're a better version of ourselves. But everything that I've seen so far in history and the reoccurrence and repeated problems, like this is the way we are meant to evolve for now.
Yeah. We're never going to get to that post scarcity future. People don't challenge the way we evolve now so that we evolve better in the future. But this is the age old debate on this
It
podcast,
does,
and
it
we'll come
is.
back to it in future episodes.
Yeah, it's my quote, right? Only on the precipice do we change.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of possibly good change, I don't hate this, but I do still have some concerns. So, Google, I don't know if it's actually, yeah, it's Google's DeepMind had a thing called AlphaFold, which is this machine learning neural network that predicts proteins and how they fold together and make, well, how chains of molecules fold into proteins. And they won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their work in creating this machine learning neural network that does all of this. And I think it's really fascinating. So there's like 2 million scientists this year alone from 190 countries have basically looked at the results in the study of this paper that they published. And it's one of the most cited publications of all time. It is a phenomenal piece of technology that unfortunately is a neural network. And so its power consumption is only slightly smaller than ChatGPT. I don't love that part, but at least of all of the things we could do with a neural network, putting creative people out of a job and helping you write your crappy email that you should just get better at writing emails, bad use of that much power consumption. I'm interested that there might be some interesting scenarios like this AlphaFold that is a good use of that. I don't know if that should be that much power, but I'm at least like there's a material benefit to a bunch of people understanding how proteins work. Proteins are just so fundamental to how so many things in the human body, cancer and diseases and a bunch of things are dependent on protein bindings and a bunch of things. There's some fascinating stuff here that I'm mad at, but I'm not that mad at it.
Yeah, and I mean, this goes back to the essence of the previous conversation. Again, like the guys that will benefit a lot from this is going to be medicine, right? Like the
Right, yeah.
biomeds, meds. Like there's going to be drug design, basically, right? So drug design
Yeah.
is going to be a big deal from this. And anybody who's ever opened up the instructions of their drugs and looked at the chemical compound, which I do occasionally, but yeah, that's an interest. It's almost like if the devil had a business, it's probably them, right? Like it's the drug designers.
Probably.
Yeah, he's a heavy investor in that. So, but again, that's the thing, right? Like the good that will come from this and the good that will come from
Right.
the drug designers is there's a positive in the long run.
Probably a trade-off that we could make. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes. So yeah, this one I wasn't mad at. I thought that was kind of cool. Nobel Prize. I guess the paper was released in 2021 and the Nobel Prize committee just takes a while to get around to deciding you did good work, but yeah, pretty cool.
Well, it's probably pretty thick too, right?
It took them a while
It took him a while to read.
in
I mean, can you imagine going home reading that?
All right, this next one is pretty complicated and I don't quite know where to land on it. So, California had a quote unquote controversial AI bill, SB 1047, and the wording of the bill was very weird. The bill gives examples of, quote, critical harms as a bad actor using an AI model to create a weapon that results in mass casualties or instructing one to orchestrate a cyber attack causing more than 500 million in damages, which in comparison, the CrowdStrike outage is estimated to have caused upward of $5 billion. So CrowdStrike would have been applied by this law. The bill makes developers, that is the companies that develop the models, liable for implementing sufficient safety protocols to prevent outcomes like these. And the law got vetoed by Governor Gavin Newsom, and so it didn't go through. Gavin Newsom has done a bunch of things which are incredibly pro-business, and it's weird why bother having a Democrat in the office. But this one, I think that there's an interesting law here, which is if you're going to build these models and they get taken advantage of in a way that you could have predicted, there is probably some degree of liability. But the way this law specifically was written was pitched as like this amazing law that's going to keep AI companies in line from, abusing their power and blah, blah, blah. And then you read the text and it's this weird thing about like if the AI gets used to create a weapon of mass destruction, and I'm like, stop watching the Mission Impossible movies. Like that is not the thing I'm worried about from ChatGPT. I don't know. It was a weird law. I don't know how to quite feel about it because I don't love when Silicon Valley wins and bribes the governor to do what they need him to do. But yeah, I don't know. This
I think
one.
even Pelosi was anti-bill on this one, though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Pelosi is the representative of San Francisco. She's never been great on technology regulation.
Yeah, and I don't want bills rushing through, right? Like we do have to stop the guy with the AI mass destruction weapon, I guess. It's kind of a weird
I mean,
bill.
that's the thing is I was like, it's a
It's
weird
a
one. I
weird
couldn't
bill.
quite understand. Like, you guys wrote a bill and you sold the bill as this amazing, like, we're going to make sure that AI companies are, operating responsibly and get held accountable for the CrowdStrike style screw ups of the world. But then they wrote it like mass destruction and cyber crimes. And I'm like, I don't think anyone is trying to get ChatGPT to write you a cybercrime terrorism playbook. Like, what are we doing here? It was a weird law that probably should have been vetoed. And to your point, like maybe take a little bit more time to figure out what we actually need to do. I don't know. The fact that so many people in Silicon Valley were against it immediately made me be like, is there something here that we should be figuring out?
Yeah, and it's not like like Newsom he signed like quite a few bills in recently, right? Like
He's vetoed a ton too. He's a
he has, but
weird, yeah.
17, I mean, towards the end of September, it was reported 17 bills, right? Which fairly comprehensive, deep cracking down on deepfakes, AI watermarking, protecting children and workers, combating AI generated misinformation.
Sure.
And actually, California is probably ahead of a lot of states, right? Like, how many states are even thinking about this?
Well, and of all of the places that need to think about it, it is the world's fourth largest economy and home to most of these tech companies. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm okay with this. I feel like I feel like they're passing the right bills at the right time. Isn't he? He's one of your guys anyway, right? Isn't he, Newsom?
Barely. It's hard to tell sometimes. He seems fully bought by some of the most powerful people in California, so I don't know.
That's okay though. I mean, at least he's. It seems like and I haven't looked at all the bills that they passed, but it
Some of
seems
them are
like
very good. I'm not. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some good stuff in there.
especially on the cracking down on the sexually because the deep fake thing is definitely something that worries me
Yeah.
because I can be all blasé about how we evolve and how we don't seem to do it conscientiously, but some things you can allow in the
No, the
beginning.
deep fakes are going to ruin so much of culture. It is going to, I mean, as soon as a teenager can make a deep fake of their ex-girlfriend and they don't even need the revenge porn, they can just deep fake it and they can, right now, you could claim, I don't have child pornography. That is not real. It is a thing I made up, but you fully ruined your ex-girlfriend's, like, life. But there's some bad stuff that deep fakes are going to do. Politics is going to be impossible to know whether or not Kamala Harris really said that thing. Like, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, the law's definitely going to be behind all this.
Yes, which is not great.
It's not great in a country like America where I don't fully understand the judicial system here, but state to state governance compliance and laws around tech.
Oh, the federal system is a nightmare. It is the
Yeah.
worst form of government ever invented. Yeah, no. States' rights is nonsense. It's why we had to have the Civil Rights Acts because Mississippi was like, nah, black people don't really deserve a lot. And it's like, no, one state shouldn't get to decide that.
Oh yeah, I always forget Mississippi's a state.
Not just a river in the middle of the
Just a
country.
river. Yeah.
That's where the steamboats are, right? All right, so this next one is sort of random, but I did think it was interesting. So JFrog is this company, and I'll describe what JFrog does in a second, that apparently a couple of private equity firms have taken notice, and so JFrog's stock shot up at the idea that private equity was going to acquire them, and usually what private equity does is acquire a company and pay out all the shareholders and take it private and then farm it for parts. So JFrog is this fairly fundamental piece of technology that a ton of tech companies use, which is, it is the repository for all of the shared libraries of code that everyone uses. So there used to be a thing called Artifactory. JFrog is sort of the current version of that, and basically kind of like what we talked about a couple of months ago where that guy noticed a memory leak and it turned out a hacker had hacked a fundamental piece of technology and was trying to like bring down the global internet through that thing. That's what happens when you have these really helpful shared library resources where I can just go and say, I don't want to have to figure out how to convert, British time to American, time zone. So there's a library out there that helps me do time zone calculations. There's a library out there that helps me write, a dollar amount to the database correctly in all of the right formats, and it can't have more than 3 decimal places. Why should I write that code? There's millions of these helpful libraries that do all of these small little pieces of functionality so that you as an engineer don't have to do them. You can just go and focus on what's the unique thing you want to add to the ecosystem on top of all of those libraries. And so a company like JFrog basically provides that library and that core capability to manage all of those shared required components that you want to do. And so when you hear a company, it's the firms include Permira and Hellman and Friedman. I have no idea about private equity firms, but private equity is the thing that destroyed Toys R Us. It is the thing that is currently ruining industry after industry in this country. Anytime you hear about a situation where a private equity firm bought a company, loaded that company up with debt, so basically took the debt off of their books, and now they are debt free, and stuck it onto, that's what killed Toys R Us. Toys R Us didn't lose to Amazon. Toys R Us didn't lose to online competition. Plenty of people still liked taking their kids to a physical location, and it was because Toys R Us got acquired by a private equity firm who loaded it up with billions of dollars of debt, and then everything Toys R Us did was in service of that debt rather than in providing an actual good to people. And so the stores ended up shutting down and they killed Toys R Us. And private equity has done this to industry after industry, company after company, and it's terrible. And it's probably not great if JFrog, so a JFrog spokesperson said they are not in discussions with any firm regarding merger and acquisition at this time. So who knows if this report is real, but it is one of those things where, like, it's bad enough that private equity is killing so many industries. I cannot imagine what happens when they start mucking around with some just like core foundational internet technology, like our code repository databases. I don't know. I don't love it. I don't love it because of the industry trend. Specifically for JFrog, it may not end up being a thing at all. It may not have a huge impact if they do muck around with it, but fucking private equity, man, it's awful.
Two things. Yeah, shame on you for killing Toys R Us, right? Because
Yes.
And then two, Toys R Us is probably one of those places where I've been uncomfortable moments. Because when you go without a kid, it's
Oh
like,
yeah, that's
you're like, now
I'm
I'm
here
just a
for my
dude in
nephew.
a
Don't
toy
worry, I'll
store.
leave
Yeah,
soon.
yeah. And like,
Right.
I'm in Toys R Us for 2 hours. Like, what? But it's just such a cool store, man. Like, I never grew out of toys.
Right.
It's not socially acceptable for me to sit and play with them, which is why it's great having kids, right? Because you're like,
Right, exactly.
you just keep playing even when they've gone. It's like, they're going to school and you're still playing. Like, yeah. Actually, JFrog, it's interesting. I was kind of scratching my head as to how anybody would be that interested, but it's actually it's their AI play with NVIDIA, right? That's
sure.
bulking them up, which is kind of understandable. Like, yeah, we need to get this from proof of concept to production, and you could see like a JFrog, but yeah, I mean, just
Right.
was just such a dry piece of, no offense, JFrog. I mean,
No, it's weird, right? It's like, why do you want this boring piece of plumbing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like JFrog.
Private equity never has good intent, so I can only imagine. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But it looks like it's fairly interesting. It's fairly interesting when you consider their partnership with NVIDIA, how far they could go. So it's still not a very entertaining piece of software, though.
True. All right, so this next one, there's a man who is suing TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, and Meta for being too addictive. So the lawsuit argues that the social media companies were negligent in designing the apps because they're built to make users dependent on them. There was just the other week a release where TikTok ran an internal study and verified that this is true. They have known it is, not as, well, it's not as fatal as smoking and tobacco companies who knew decades and decades ago how lethal their product was and still continued to have Joe Camel sell to kids. It's not that bad, but it is bad. Social media addiction is causing problems, societal and almost certainly fatal, not in the degree of, cigarettes, but it's pretty bad. And TikTok at least knows that it's bad. I think there might have been a meta report too. And so it is one of those weird ones where, like, as part of the quote in the article, the 24-year-old has limited his social media use to just 2 hours a day. But according to Lambert employee Philippi Brout, the apps continue to affect his sleep and productivity. And it is one of those ones that, like, I'm assuming your reaction is going to be some liberal, hippy dippy, do better, be better, control your own addiction kind of thing. And it is not the best lawsuit. I think it's interesting. I think there's a bigger topic here that the industry should tackle. But this guy's one lawsuit, I'm like, oh, was this the test balloon we wanted to float to have this conversation? I don't know that this is great.
It's not a good start to the argument, right? Like,
it's an important conversation to have, but this guy I'm not sure was the foot in the door.
Yeah, because even me with my sort of opinion around this, like, it's a problem. Right?
Yeah.
I do feel like this person anybody who brings up a lawsuit like this should also be punished. It should be waged. If you win this lawsuit, well done. If you lose it, you go to prison. Do you still want to do the lawsuit? Do you still want to do the? Because
your horrible tort reform nonsense.
No, this is a horrible lawsuit, right? However, yeah, we got a big problem. I was in a conversation with an editor of a fairly big, reputable newspaper some time ago, and he said, you seem very pessimistic about the next generation. I was like, 3 to 4. I was like, I'm pessimistic about the next 100 to 150 years because of things like this, right?
Right.
Like, I know from using Twitter how completely just
It breaks your
crazy,
brain.
how
Right.
crazy you can be about those followers, right?
Yep.
So I just don't use them. I'm like, oh, that's
Right.
addictive for me. I'm not going to do that. That's just how I've always been. I don't go to casinos very often because
Sure.
I'm not a good gambler, right?
Right.
But these people own this. They own this.
They, as in this guy trying to sue and being
Yes.
responsible. But
Yes.
this is the thing is this is the same, this is the scope and scale is different. I'm not sure I'm going to say it's equal, but the impact to society is fairly bad and negative for all of
Yeah.
us, which is comparable to cigarettes, secondhand smoke,
Yep.
firsthand complications. The companies knowing about it is the bigger problem. It's the fact that Meta and TikTok have run their own internal studies and know that they have a problem, that they are causing harm, and have chosen not to mitigate the harm that they're causing. Fine, random 24-year-old doesn't get to sue them, but I do think the conversation is important, and it is fully ruined Gen Z and the next generation. And you're right, it's probably going to ruin a couple more generations. A bunch of things are bad now. The ability for these kids to have the attention span to consume complex topics. A bunch of people are getting into college right now and finding out that none of them know how to read a full book because their entire childhood has been standardized tests and TikTok, and you consume things in 2-paragraph quotes and 30-second videos, and it's fully ruined media literacy, comprehension of simple things, simple goofy things. Like, kids used to actually go and become Bob Dylan fans 20 years after Bob Dylan was a person who you should be a fan of, and it informed your appreciation of the modern musician and knew the lineage of how this person came to be. Now you got kids on TikTok who are like, this is the greatest thing ever, and it's like, no, she is just copying from the 12 people who came before her, and she would admit that to you and be happy to talk to you about her musical influences, and none of you care about that because you have the attention spans of gnats. It is fully ruined. Even like, I'm fully ruined by social media, much less I cannot imagine the kids who have been grown up fully. And yeah, it is really bad, and some mechanism to make these companies reckon with that or make the culture reckon with it has to happen at some point, or we're already fully on the way to the Wall-E idiocracy future, but it's bad.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we'll ever get. We certainly won't get to the extent of that movie, right? But it is not going to change. And no offense to, well, yeah, offense, I guess, offense to, but like, before you go after the social media companies, like, parents, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. So
Yeah.
you want to talk about the feeling of doomed and why I'm so pessimistic about how we get to this utopian future? If we get there, which I don't have to worry about because I'll be long gone by the time we're even close to or not close to, but I get it. The social media companies have created a drug as bad as cocaine and as bad as heroin, as addictive, right? And
Right.
it's going to change society, but like, the parents, come on, do better.
Yeah.
Do better.
There's a weird balancing act in my mind of consumers are morons, and so if they don't know that there's a problem in the thing like TikTok, then right, like there's an amount of responsibility on the brand offering capabilities to know of the harmful effects and warn the consumer. A parent couldn't necessarily know that. At the same time, these are the parents of the kids who couldn't cope with the fact that for a year during COVID, they would actually have to be responsible for their child for 24 hours a day, and were basically taking advantage of the teachers as babysitters and partially raising their kids. And it's like, no, sorry, buddy, teachers don't deserve to die for you. You have to raise your kids a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry that sucks for you.
But we're talking about a country here where Jamie Oliver tried to convince a school district to eat healthy food, right?
The clip of him making chicken nuggets in front of the kids and showing them how disgusting a chicken nugget is, and then all of the kids see the end result and they're like, oh, I'll eat that. And he's like, I literally just spent 20 minutes showing you how disgusting this pink sludge is, and you still want to eat it? And all the kids are like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. That is our next 150 years.
I would like to hope that it's not that bad.
If somebody eats crappy food every day of their life, chances are they're going to die early, right? But that is the American way. It's like, don't tell me. Doesn't matter that, hey, your unhealthy lifestyle is why we all pay more for health insurance, right? No,
Right.
this is the country where it doesn't matter. Like, it's unhealthy. I'm free to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And it just gets spread out. It's
Yeah.
just such it's a weird trifle of, I mean, you got conservatives arguing, well, I can eat what I want, right?
Right.
Because in this weird sort of socialist way, everybody's going to pay for my treatment. It's
Right.
like, but wait a minute, we're conservatives, so we don't want everybody to have to do that, right? It's
Right.
just, it's the weird trifle where that's why we're doomed next 4 generations.
I hope it's not that bad, but yes, the signs are not pointing towards us being able to hold the parents or the generations or the technology accountable for any of it.
So it gets better, right? But it gets better in a way that you don't want to hear, I think, right? Which is, if I'm living in a virtual world, this way of life is okay. You know me, right? Like in 100 years, if there are people who have the brain chip who don't wake up in a morning and they just plugged into their jobs, right? None of this is a problem. I'm okay with this, right? But then those people should not be functioning parts of society. That's like, you want to live in the virtual world, you live in the virtual world.
Well, right, but if you've gotten to the point that you can live in the virtual world, it's because you have an IV drip of nutrient slurry just feeding you the correct bare minimum. Everyone's gonna weigh 120 pounds, and it's gonna be your brain tasting the steak like the Matrix.
And that's fine. That's okay, right? So I'm one of those people. But I don't then get to mess up my brain living in the virtual world and live in the real world. That's my premise. You don't get to live in both. You want to go fry your brain on social media, and we know the crazy stuff that these people say on social media, right?
Sure.
And then the crazy people who believe it. It's the same thing I said before. They need to be on an island. They need to be in their own internet. You don't get to be in the general population internet. It has to happen. It has to happen.
Don't know how you manage that. There was a very good. You don't like Doctor Who? You don't actually watch Doctor Who, right?
No, none of it. No.
So this most recent season had an episode called Dot and Bubble, and Dot and Bubble was about this planet full of Gen Zers who were stuck in a literal technology bubble and didn't know how to exist outside of the bubble, and an alien species came down and started eating them, and they didn't understand that was happening because it was happening outside of the digital bubble, and so their friends were just going offline randomly as they got eaten by aliens. There was this really fascinating look at like what happens to the people who don't know how to cope with existing outside of the bubble, and there's a degree that I was like, and then it turns out she was super racist at the end, and I was like, yeah, maybe the alien should have eaten you. But yeah, no, there is part of the choice of how you're going to live and consume this stuff that my problem is choice only works in an informed consumer ecosystem, and I would argue that consumers are not properly informed about the choices. I don't think these days you can't really argue, only because we do drug education in school, but you come out of school knowing all the drugs are pretty bad, crack is the really, really bad one. Like there's a degree of education that happens so that you are informed to know you're gonna do some cocaine, bad, not as bad as doing the meth or the crack, but like you're making an informed decision to do that poorly. I would argue we don't have that in social media, because to your point about drugs and processed food, it took you 40 years to figure out whether the processed food had an impact on your grandchildren. It's too soon to know what the impact was on social media, and we now know the impacts. We're starting to see the impacts, but the companies are also on the hook for telling users what they know about it, and there's this weird education cycle of like, in 20 years, if you're all informed about social media, then maybe I'm on your page, but we're not well enough versed in the negative side effects to properly educate and warn the consumer about making an informed choice. And so the choice right now is non-consensual.
I am willing to stand by this next statement.
Oh, God.
If the social media companies told you that if you use their technology for 20 years and one day you will die, people will use it for 20 years and they'll stop using it the day before the last day.
But that's an informed choice. You cannot deny that the people who are like, I should be able to eat McDonald's 3 times a day, they are making an informed choice. The cigarette smokers were not making an informed choice because the company was withholding it. And right, so these are all
But then they started putting pictures on boxes and we were still buying them.
No, that's what I'm saying though. At least if you today want to smoke a cigarette, there is no world in which that is not an informed choice. Everything is in front of you to make you aware of the consequences of your actions. If you're still stupid enough to smoke, it does not look cool, you smell bad, that's on you. All I'm saying is, I don't think we have a broad enough understanding in the culture about the negative impact of all of these things.
But then are you okay with just the principle, which is cool. I was informed because I'm sort of pointing out like 99 out of 100 people, even if they read that and they were informed, won't give a shit.
I don't think that I don't
I don't
know
think
that
they
that's
care.
true. I don't know that that's true because we've learned not we haven't learned this lesson entirely. The drug war is a war we lost decades ago and we now just suffer the consequences of it. But we learned from prohibition. We learned from a bunch of things. You don't ban cigarettes, you just make cigarettes prohibitively expensive and a so fully educated clear choice for consumers that the number of consumers who choose to still go down that road is smaller, and you achieve the same policy goal without actually needing to ban it. There is a version of drug control in which cocaine is legal in less than zero point 0.1 ounces or something, and everything else is controlled and modified, and or whatever word I'm looking for. Not a lot of people do cocaine, man. There is like, right, like everyone knows that pot access is now more and more legal in a bunch of states, and you don't suddenly see pot usage didn't go up by 2,000% as a result of it being legalized. The people who are making that choice were making an informed choice, and now they simply don't have to go to jail for it. I'm not totally convinced that if people knew the impacts of social media, if we were forced to put controls and warnings and give parents the ability to say, you can only do 2 hours of social media, the app is locking you down, and you're not, like, if a bunch of controls were in place, if you had informed consent, I'm agreeing with you that there's the horses are out of the barn to a degree on some of this, because it's not like cocaine. It's not illegal and it's not difficult to acquire, and it doesn't kill one out of whatever many people. Like, there is a weird thing as part of this. I'm just not convinced it's 99%. I think a number of people would make a more informed decision as a result of all of that education.
I feel like I feel like TV probably went through a similar, when the family sat in front of the TV, right? Like there was probably an expectation about how much, the very first people who wanted TV, like how much TV we should watch a day, and then all of a sudden it just TV dinners, and then now you have a culture which is like, this is America, man. You're just sitting in front of the TV. That's the American thing, man. And we know screens are bad. How many people, man, let their kids spend hours and hours on a screen every day at 2-year old? Like they still do this shit. I have no faith that even with the disclaimers and all of the warnings, that anybody's gonna give a crap. Nobody's gonna give a crap.
I'm not convinced of that. TV had to implement the TVMA Y7 ranking to help parents have a more informed ability to control what their kids wanted. The V chip was hated by a bunch of people, but was actually a thing that was adopted and helped parents control their children's consumption of information. People put controls in place. Plenty of households had rules
but
that you can only watch TV for 2
but
hours during dinner.
we're pretending though that parents didn't know that being on social media for more than whatever the amount of time that they could fathom, like they knew.
No, you are making assumption. You live in a bubble.
When you watch somebody who's addicted to something, like I know when my kids are on their phone, I know that they're on social media. They're either on Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or, swiping partners left and right. Like I know they're on social media the entire time. All I have to do is say, give me your phone, put it down. You're in my house. Like,
But then you were a good parent, and but you live in a bubble. You and I live in a knowledge bubble of all of these things because of the industry we work in. That
yeah,
is not the case for 90% of parents.
which is why I
90% of
think,
parents didn't understand why. Oh, that's so cute. They get to talk with their friends. I would have loved to talk with my friends
yeah,
when I was a teenager. It's so great that this modern technology is helping them stay connected. I had to be on 4-way conference calls with my girlfriends to be able to talk about all the boys, blah, blah, blah. It's so great that no, most parents don't understand the negative side of it. They didn't understand that Instagram was showing you anorexia content and ruining girls and teen girls' ability to feel confident in themselves. Like, no, you are assigning a level of knowledge that does not exist in the general public.
no. I agree that they don't
Okay.
understand what's happening technically under the covers. One,
Okay.
I'm going to say if we took 10 parents, let's look at the demographics of the country. Half of them don't give a shit. That's probably my half, right? The other half are ill-informed,
Yeah.
and even the ones that are informed, there'll still be some pushback where they're like, yeah, okay, this is like the video game thing where they're saying my kid's playing violent video games leads to school shooting, which it doesn't. They're going to look at it and say, social media, right? Like, how dangerous can it be? I don't think anybody cares.
I think you're too pessimistic. There are like you
Supermodels in
maybe because
America.
you grew up weirdly in
No,
England or something, but like
no,
no, what I'm
because
saying is we all had the friends whose parents were super controlling about TV control and time on the computer and all of that kind of stuff. There are so many millions and millions of parents out there who absolutely are on top of this, not because they necessarily knew about the actual concrete reasons, but they just kind of didn't trust. They hated the boob tube. Their parents hated the boob tube, so they didn't get TV time. They therefore transferred that onto their kids. I think you are overestimating the
no,
people who.
I'm not overestimating. I'm actually underestimating those people you're talking about because when it was TV and it was front and center of the living room, it was easy to turn off and say, we're done for the night, no more TV. As soon as the kid gets a phone, you can't tell me that some of those parents are going and figuring out, like, oh, here's how I have to track my kid's usage on that phone. They have no idea. And I bet you half of the kids are getting around it.
I think we're talking anecdotally and we don't have data. There's data. My problem is you're talking anecdotally and I just don't fundamentally agree with your anecdote, and therefore this conversation's never going to go anywhere
That's true.
until someone shows us the data that tells us how many of these parents are doing it, because my assumption is it's higher than you're giving credit for. But I don't know why we're arguing this minute point.
A lot of the parents are hooked on the same social media that their kids are hooked on.
True. Yes.
We're doomed for generations.
Okay.
And actually, it's not even doomed. It's just a shitty time to be around. Where we end up might not be so bad. I guess that's where you and I differ. Where we end up might not be so bad, right? But it's a shitty time to be alive for the people who remembered what it was like before, right?
Sure.
What happens when we're gone and the only people left are the people who only ever remember social media?
Right.
There's no going back. There is no going back.
And my concern is unless people like you and I try to fight against that, then you'll never get to the utopia because
No.
they will lose all of that memory and you'll never break the cycle. People like us who can remember are the ones who are going to break the cycle.
Yeah, but I don't want to break the cycle.
Well, then you're dooming the people to never reach the utopia is my conclusion.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So we all have our part in getting to utopia. And I'm the guy standing on the sidelines, not actually involved,
yeah.
pointing why it's going to take longer, right? Like, oh, you guys shouldn't do it like that. Well, why do you jump in and help? No, I'm good. Yeah, I
Right.
know I'm that
Yeah,
guy. It's like
right.
people say, well, who would you vote for if you were American? I was like, I wouldn't vote. It's like, why? Because my vote doesn't make a difference. And they say, well, what if everybody thought like that? I'm like, not everybody thinks like that. Like, of course they don't. Like, which is why I'm happy to say I would never vote. My one vote would not make a difference. Well, if everybody thought like that, but they don't think like that. So I'm just standing on the sideline watching this all play out.
Yeah, it's bad.
No, I
Yeah.
did that because it's impossible to. I mean, look at my own political beliefs. I am ostracized by my own party. Guess what? For not being completely insane. So
Yeah.
imagine what they're going to be like when someone like me is also pointing out, like, hey, you know what? You should try to control how much social media your kids have. These people don't want to be told that. They don't care. Doomed.
On to better, well, not better topics, but funnier, annoying topics for at least you and I. Google has changed their assistant on their Android phones. So the Pixel phone, at least for now, I don't know that this is rolled out to all Android devices, but Pixels used to have what was called Google Assistant, and it was the little Siri wannabe that would help you if you wanted to do voice commands, and they've replaced it with something called Gemini, which I take personal offense to as a Gemini, and it is worse on every measurable bit. Like, it is not good at anything. It doesn't do everything that Google Assistant did. What it does that Google Assistant used to do, it's worse at. It is boggling that they have decided to throw away perfectly good code out of Google Assistant and replace it with this LLM ChatGPT knockoff crap that can't do anything. This article, I'll link it in the show notes, has just a list of unending places where Google Assistant pre-LLM ChatGPT style AI used to do a good result and can't. Local results are worse. Gemini can't take notes. There's to-do list functionality is not supported anymore. Weather doesn't work right. The turn-by-turn directions aren't loading correctly in Google Maps. Music and podcasts can only be handled by the YouTube app because Google wants to keep you in their ecosystem. It can't search through your photos. Like, it is baffling that Google has doubled down on a thing which is measurably worse than the old technology that they had that was perfectly good, and it is baffling.
Yeah, it's not a new conversation for us either. It's like that moment, like, is there more to the story? Right? Are we talking about like I'll throw out something wild. We talk about an age in tech where Google's like, look, we just need to replace it, and we know what we're going to have is inferior, but then we get to turn all this old tech, this legacy tech off.
Sure, it's a company we acquired 8 years ago, and we
Yeah,
still never figured out how to get it integrated into the
yeah.
data center properly, and blah blah blah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or is it literally a bad product vision where it's like,
I think it's one of those things where an executive was like, LLMs are the thing, and we have to have LLMs. So tell me how you're going to put an LLM into Pixel. And people were like, I guess all of everyone's LLM is a chatbot. So why don't we do a chatbot too? Oh, we have a chatbot feature. Great, we'll just replace it with our shitty LLM, and it doesn't work. It is just awful. It is a full step backwards, and it is just a wild choice. And it feels like the kind of just Wall Street appeasing nonsense that you have to say on an earnings call to convince the investors and the shareholders that you are embracing all of this AI nonsense because that's what the market wants you to do. And so you just jam it into whatever you need. It's like, at least Atlassian doing that in Jira and Confluence, I kind of, summarize the 12-page long Confluence page and tell me what it's about. It's stupid. It's planet burning. It's a horrible use of power, but I can kind of get why sometimes there are companies that do this. This is a baffling case.
yeah, and it makes me think more generally about, like, because we all know I love AI, right? And it's funny because I was thinking about how definitely the companion piece of it, right? Like the co-pilot, the companion, it sits next to me, and I've never felt that more than sort of getting back into developing over the last month and having AI as my sidekick. It's very heartwarming.
Oh my God.
It's the only time I've found AI as a good companion. It just fits
Because you're
my.
asking it about code? How does this interaction
Yeah,
go?
yeah, because it's like, because when you're coding and you're designing, quite often you're not in the software architecture phase, right? Where you're cranking out code and you're not thinking, and you want to have a conversation with somebody where you might question yourself. It's almost like pair programming, right?
Uh-huh.
Because pair programming, also, the type of person you pair program with is really important. You don't want somebody who's just going to sit
Yes.
there and not say anything, right? Like, you want
Right.
somebody who's going to talk to you and say, hey, actually, maybe use link there and more consistency, whatever, right? I really enjoyed that. It's the only time that so far that I've found AI to be a worthy companion for several hours and just sit there and say, yeah, well, what am I missing here? And it sort of give an opinion and me say, yeah, no, that's not worth it. Like, I really enjoyed that.
Okay.
I haven't, now I got the new Android and it's AI enabled. I was so excited. And maybe it's just my general feeling about phones these days, because now I'm in COVID, I'm at home. I
Yeah.
don't get work calls, so I'm not on my
Right.
phone a lot. I haven't used any of the AI features. So, like,
No.
this whole Gemini thing, I'm like, are other people getting that feeling with their devices where AI is becoming their companion on their phone? It's just not happening
Sure.
for me.
So I'm not taking it personally as in like you did this to me or anything, but it is fascinating why you and I are working on the same thing. We're both coding right now.
Yeah.
What in your mental process was I should talk ChatGPT and not Kevin?
What was in my process?
Like, you've worked with Tim. Like, what would like I'm curious why you've been a person who has
Yeah. No,
found
I
people
know
to
the answer.
partner with.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This sounds so.
You wanted to agree with you?
No, no, no. But it's not dissimilar to that. So it sounds so conceited. I didn't want it to agree with me, but I wanted to have multiple opinions, but I wanted them to be my opinions. So if I was getting into a conversation and there were two designs, like, they were ultimately both my designs, right? They were,
Right.
but I wanted to have that conversation almost with myself. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Is like,
Okay.
that age old, like, what if I went for dinner with myself? How would that be? That's how I feel about having Chat GPT when I'm coding.
Okay. And you're not, I guess this is where you and I just fundamentally disagree about the value of other people's regurgitated work. Like, you're the likelihood that you would have asked me or Tim a question and got challenged in a way that made a better solution versus ChatGPT can only ever tell you what other people have done, and it feels stagnant to me in that
No,
way.
but this is why I am champagne and not just apple juice, right? Is, notice when you gave me redesigns and refactors, I didn't say boo to a goose, because I don't need your opinion if you suggest something, maybe maybe I reshape or redesign or push back, but there's a trust level with you and a guy like Tim where if
Sure.
you refactor something, unless you completely broke it and you looked at something the wrong way,
Right.
I just accept it because I know how smart you guys are and I know that your designs will be as good, if not better than mine.
Sure.
It wasn't so much me replacing you as much it was just saying it was just getting a second opinion. It was just like a
Okay.
conversation like, okay, so I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't need your opinion. I would be more apt to just take something from you and slap it
Sure.
in there. I wouldn't do that with AI.
All right.
So there you go.
Interesting.
See,
All
I
right.
trust you more than I do AI. For now. For
For
now.
now.
For now.
Till ChatGPT 5.
But still, is this because I'm an AI nut, right? But this is not becoming it's not becoming that for
No.
me.
But it's also, I don't know about you, but it's like the Roku, well, Comcast, I think, was the first that I saw do this, where Comcast was like, tell your remote what to do with a voice command. And Roku has that. And like, I feel that way about Siri and the Android AI capabilities is your phone, your remote. I've never been the person who's like, Roku, go to, Hulu. Like, I don't want a voice command. I am far more efficient. I've never wanted to watch a video. Give me the transcript of the video and I will read you so much faster than I'll listen to you. Like, audio is not my ideal format. I want to press a command on a remote. I want to type a thing into a keyboard. I've never wanted the talk to my device thing.
Yeah. And so this reminds me of I was at dinner with Microsoft and they took me out, so thank you, Microsoft. After you and I had been bought by Experian, and
Yeah.
I was actually sitting with the Connect guys because apparently like a lot of the IT guys have to do like a stint in Xbox, and so they've got some experience with Connect.
Interesting.
And they said, "How do you like the Connect?" Because they knew I was like an early adopter, right? And I'm like,
Sure.
it doesn't make any sense to me. I was like I get the game piece. I was like, they're like, well, what about changing channels? I was like, dude, at 2 a.m. I'm under the blankets. I don't want to wave my arm.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
dark. I turned the light off. It can't even see me. Like
Right.
it's dumb. I was like, it's
Yeah.
dumb. And same with Alexa. Like I like turning my Alexa lights on, but at night I just find it kind of annoying because the kids are down. I'm like, I gotta shout out Alexa to do something right now.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm not as early adopter as I am. There are still some interfaces where I was like, Connect never made any sense to me. Like, I'm gonna do that. I know where every button is on my control.
Meanwhile, you do want an Apple Vision Pro where that is your only choice is to gesture in the air like a Minority Report user.
Yeah, but only until like
Can
my
read your eye
HoloLens,
movements.
like and Vision Pro has the iris tracker, right? So eventually with a chip, really what should be happening is that
Sure.
I look and I think open and it just opens, right?
Right. There you go.
That's what we need to get to. But yeah, I never thought the Connect was a good idea for the whole control.
No, not for the control. I do think for the game, like motion tracking,
Yeah,
there's
it was good.
interesting uses, not as many as they wanted there to be. I also do think that there's like people probably would hate this, but there's a version of the Kinect that knows that there's 4 people in the living room currently, and so renting the movie is $25, or there's one person
Yeah.
in the living room, so renting the movie is $5. There's an interesting thing there too that I do think, like, you go to the movie theater, you have to pay for every seat that you buy. Why? Of course, renting a movie at home is $20. They're trying to average out a family of 5 versus an individual.
I know you like to paint me as the evil one, but the fact that you would put that in the universe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course I'm going to want to do that. Yeah. I don't have 3 kids. I shouldn't be paying Disney the tax to watch the movie.
You should be thanking Americans like me. Like I'm continuing the country.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. It does. Here's my big fascination with AR VR, right? Like and what you just said is when I go see the Celtics in augmented reality glasses, the advertisement boards I see at the side of the court should be different than the ones you see,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
I should be able to
Exactly.
resell
Absolutely.
that. And it's great
Yeah.
because I'm reselling the same advertising space over and over and over,
Yep.
right? So I think we have to get there. I don't like the idea of like
variable pricing.
Yeah,
even though you
variable
wanted to charge
no.
you wanted to charge the single mom, the Kroger price of the bread could go up on the Kroger shelf with dynamic pricing. So you like dynamic pricing some of the times, but not when it hurts you.
It's also really hard to do. Like, what if family just showed up halfway through the movie? Is it going to be like, are they planning on staying?
It pauses. Hold
Yeah.
on. Your license
Oh.
is for 4 people in the living room. What's going on?
And like mom was wearing makeup in the first part of the TV show, and now the movie's like, wait, that's a different person. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's still 4 people, right? They're like, no, where's the other one? It just, yeah, it just feels unenforceable too, because everybody's just sitting off camera, right? It's like my camera faces the wall.
Just turn the camera on the TV around,
Yeah.
put a dummy behind the TV.
You get your little kids' action figures and you put, right in front of the camera, and it's like,
Right in front
oh,
of the
there's
camera.
one. Yeah, so we're gonna get
Yeah,
around that. But
right.
here's my problem with all of this. Not problem, but here's my sort of spin on all of this is with social media, with self-driving cars, with AI, with everything. The changes are happening faster than society and life can change, and that's the interesting bit. It's an interesting experiment, right? Like, and throw COVID in there while you're at it too. Oh, and by the way, we had a global epidemic, right? Like, so nobody works in the office anymore. Talk about like all the shit going at a million miles an hour. Life can't catch up. The law can't catch up. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting next 30 years for you and I fighting about this stuff. And I will just keep pointing out, like, and yet we do it.
And I wish we didn't. We could learn from the past.
We could.
Yeah, but we won't choose to.
No.
All right, well, on that cheery note, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Acceptance Criteria. To read articles that we've written on similar topics to the ones we talk about here, head over to the blog at acceptancepod.com. You can also follow us on most apps. We're at AcceptancePod. We'll post links to show notes and any articles from the blog over there.
And a friendly reminder that we are always interested in hearing questions directly from you, our listeners, for our segment User Stories. If you've got a scenario you'd like help with, whether it's working with an engineering or product team member, or trying to figure out how to solve an agile process problem, or you just can't understand why your favorite app updated everything and now it's terrible, we're here to talk it through with you. You can send those questions to acceptancepod@gmail.com or submit them on the Discord in the User Stories channel, and we might be able to help on a future episode. And we're happy to keep it anonymous so no one can trace it back to you if you end up talking to a coworker or something.
For now, I'm Kevin Thomas Euland, and you can find me on most apps at KThomasEuland. That's ULLAND.
And I'm Andrew Greener, and you can find me on most apps at Criteria Greener. That's GREINER. And this has been Acceptance Criteria. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.